So I wrote some things. Can I just share
You
this? Because I
certainly
think it
can.
answers
You
the
certainly
question.
can.
If you'll bear with me. So how to be a feminist. I had to learn how to be a feminist. So throughout high school and college, I was involved with clubs, organizing against wars in the Middle East, raising awareness about climate change, and demanding gay and lesbian rights. So I was heavily involved in social justice causes, but I still didn't call myself a feminist. At the time, I may have even uttered the dreaded phrase, "I believe in equality, but I'm not a feminist." Yeah, not a high point in my life. So like most people who grew up immersed in the neoliberal ideology of the West, I saw the world largely as a series of individuals making their own personal individual choices. And here I was, a young woman making my own personal choices about what to wear, what to buy, what to study, and what I wanted to do every day. Within that narrow individualistic framework, feminism seemed like a relic of the distant past. Back then, I thought sexism basically boiled down to a few bad apples with misguided personal beliefs born out of ignorance or overt hatred. So it wasn't until I was in my early to mid-20s that I began to realize my impression of feminism had been completely wrong. With the help of some amazing mentors and by reading a lot of feminist writing, especially the words of women of color and queer women from around the world, I learned to see through a sociological lens and understand the world as it really exists, as a series of intersecting social systems. Once you have a systemic and institutional framework, you see how oppression manifests in many subtle ways under the systems of what Bell Hooks calls white supremacist capitalist patriarchy. So not only did I have to learn how to be a feminist, I also had to learn how to be a feminist who understands systems. I had to learn how systems of oppression are maintained by our participation in them, but they're also self-perpetuating via paths of least resistance, and as such, are larger than any one person's choices. Okay, so this is the part where I say things that may ruffle some feathers, but I think it's a critical discussion to have. So over the past few years, I've become increasingly worried about the direction mainstream internet feminism appears to be headed, at least in the West. Unfortunately, many contemporary discourses in and around feminism tend to emphasize a form of hyper-individualism, which is informed by that neoliberal worldview. More and more, I hear variations on this idea that anything that any woman personally chooses to do is a feminist act. This attitude is often referred to as choice feminism. Choice feminism posits that each individual woman determines what is empowering for herself, which might sound good on the surface, but this concept risks obscuring the bigger picture and larger fundamental goals of the movement by focusing on individual women with a very narrow individual notion of empowerment. It erases the reality that some choices that women make have an enormous negative impact on other women's lives. So it's not enough to feel personally empowered or be personally successful within the oppressive framework of the current system. Even if an individual woman can make patriarchy work for her, it's still a losing game for the rest of the women on the planet. The fact of the matter is that some choices have ramifications beyond ourselves and reinforce harmful patriarchal ideas about women as a group and about women's bodies in our wider shared culture. And because of how systems of oppression intersect and compound one another, it's women of color, indigenous women, women living in the global south, women with disabilities, queer women, and trans women who bear the brunt of these ramifications. Choice feminism also obscures the fact that women don't have a real choice. We have a very narrow set of predetermined choices within patriarchy. Women can choose from a pre-approved palette, but we cannot meaningfully choose liberation. We cannot choose a way out from our constraints, at least not without ending these oppressive systems that limit our options. So when we talk about free choice in today's world, we're really talking about a very narrow spectrum of choices that are amenable to patriarchy. So, when we talk about how to be a feminist, for me, that means being committed to something much larger than ourselves. It's understanding what role you play in our collective movements for liberation. It's re-examining our desires and interests and understanding how those are often shared by how they're often shaped, maybe shared, who knows, by capitalism, patriarchy, and white supremacy. It's understanding our own intersections of privilege and oppression and how that will fundamentally change our behaviors and attitudes and values. It's realizing that being a feminist is a lifelong learning endeavor and that we will make some mistakes on the way, and we should be compassionate to ourselves when that happens. It's realizing that others will make mistakes and we should extend that compassion to them as well. Feminism is not about striving for perfection, it's about striving for justice. We are all connected. We are all bound together under the oppression of patriarchy, and as such, our personal actions or inactions do have a harmful effect on other women, especially those from the most marginalized communities. I realize this isn't a popular thing to say, but I can't say it apparently. That's how bad it is. No. But feel-good personal empowerment is not how to be a feminist. In order to be a feminist, we have a responsibility beyond ourselves. We have a responsibility to each other, and we have a responsibility to work for the collective liberation of all women.
Wow.
Sorry?
I looked down, I was taking notes. So that personal growth is not good enough for you. Personal development is, because there could be people here who are listening to that who really don't want to be political activists in any way. Does that discount their feminism?
I think feminism is a movement. It's a social justice movement that we participate in to end end oppressive social systems. So to me, feminism is more, one step of feminism is believing in equality. The other step is actually doing something to get there. I think that that's really important.
I'm intrigued by Anita. I'll come back to you, Jemima. I'm intrigued by Anita saying she had to learn about systems. You had to learn about the sociology of systems and structural change. Absolutely. And that was obviously quite a journey for you.
Yeah, absolutely. I sort of joke about how it was the most liberating thing that ever happened to me, and also the most frustrating for everyone around me. Because when you start learning about systems, everything is sexist, everything is racist, everything is homophobic, and you have to point it all out to everyone all the time. So there's a good year of my life. Where it was just I was the most obnoxious person to be around. And then you settle into it. You start to understand people have been living within these systems, and it was just sort of a liberating moment for me, and you learn how to pick and choose your battles and that sort of thing. But I think that that's the critical piece here, is that we have to understand this as systems. And I really like what you were saying, because that's fundamentally challenging power dynamics. It's we don't want equality within these oppressive systems. We want to create actual real equity. So it's not just replicating what currently exists and what power dynamics currently exist, right? So in the US, so I disagree with one of the things that you said earlier about how being a woman is being a feminist. Because in the US, our reproductive rights are regressing real fast. And so there are women, conservative women, who are claiming the title feminist, who are opposed to women's reproductive rights. I don't think you can be opposed to reproductive rights and be a feminist. Those things are not, they do not align in any way. And I think that, these practical, on-the-ground issues of, it's startling to think the decade that we're in, and we still are hey, we're still trying to hold on to abortion rights. We're still trying to hold on to giving childcare access and having birth control. These should be givens, and we're sort of stuck still trying to fight these fights that have been going on for decades to just hold on to what we already gained. That is very limiting to the movement in a lot of ways, because we have to legitimately put in so much energy to just save the little bit that we already have.
Yep. Now your work, so you've moved into this the digital world's depiction of women. So again, you're entering the new, which is a very old debate, and you're paying an incredible price for that too. You've got this great line that harassment is just the background radiation of your life.
Yes, me and many other women.
So what drew you into that? What was it? Was there a tipping point moment when you just thought, I can't? Was it your understanding of structures, or because you love your gaming, but you moved? There was something that tipped you into activism.
In terms of the harassment, you mean, or in terms of the representation work?
In representation of women.
So I actually started Feminist Frequency in grad school because I was really frustrated with how alienating feminist theory was in academia. That this idea of feminism is a liberating idea and should be available to all people. But in academia, you have to be privileged to attend, you have to be privileged to read the books, you have to be privileged to access scholarly text, you have to learn how to write a certain way that nobody else can understand. That's not, why would we trap these concepts in this space? And so I actually started Feminist Frequency, heavily influenced by Bell Hooks, who talked about how pop culture is where the pedagogy is happening. And I was so I'm gonna marry these two ideas and create an accessible, free show, which is not reading, because I was in grad school and did not want people to have to read anymore, that was able to talk to people about feminist theory with the texts in their lives, with the work that is influencing them and influencing their values and attitudes every single day, celebrating the things that are working well, critiquing the things that are not working well. And so that's why how that all started, is to be able to just talk to people where they're at with these ideas of feminism.
But what you've stirred up is much more than that.
I just talk about video games. I don't know what everyone's problem is.
You what? You don't know what the problem is?
I don't know what their problem is. I just talk about video games.
Very serious.
I know, right? Yeah, so it is about, I know, God, I should just cave right now. Yeah, I mean, it's this sort of goes to show how important the media is in a lot of ways, right? That like what I talk about in representations actually has an impact on our society. And it's not a monkey see, monkey do relationship, but that the media is one of our socializing components. And games are really bad to women. They just represent women really poorly across genres, across platforms, across like indies and AAAs. And now that's not to say that there aren't games that are great and have great representations, but it's pretty awful. And so the backlash of very entitled men to attack women who dare say, this is not good for us. This is not okay. We want to be included in this environment. And them pushing back and saying, no, this is our space. How dare you challenge us? Is I think part of this struggle that we're all trying to figure out how to do this feminism thing, right? And how to push back against systems that are constantly telling us to stop. I'm told every day for 3 years or more to stop doing this, right? That I'm not...
Who tells you to stop?
The internet.
The internet.
Right? And I think that's...
They don't request that you stop,
It's a massive chilling effect. So women who see what happens to me don't want that to happen to them, and I don't want that to happen to them either, but that it scares them from participating and speaking up, and it has this massive chilling effect. So we just had in California and San Francisco a big game developers conference, and there were a lot of back channel conversations about women being like, do we need to be worried being in public in a gaming space as women? Like, what is are we gonna like, how are we going to protect our safety if something happens? And I'm just like, I can't believe that we have to have these conversations about women who are going to do their work, right? Who are going to do their trade, right? It's unbelievable. And the fact that challenging the status quo results in threats of violence and acts of violence is unbelievable. Yeah. Right?
It probably was ever thus, though, wasn't it? I mean, that's what political activists throughout history have confronted. So it's not, in a way, it's not new, surprising.
But that's also horrifying, right? Like that's still the response to saying something like, hey, maybe you should tone down the boobs in your game. Like, right? Like that should not be a statement that leads me to 3 years of death threats and bomb threats and all kinds of things. I think intersectional structural feminism fundamentally changed my life in every regard. It changed who I was friends with. It changed my relationships with my family. It changed how I talked. It changed the choices that I made, education and career choices. It changed everything for me. And I think that to me, feminism is incredibly empowering. So when like the big first harassment wave hit in 2012, when I launched my Kickstarter, feminism is what empowered me to continue because I understood how systems worked. I understood that this isn't about me as an individual because I could be any woman in this place. And I used feminism to determine how I was going to react, how I was going to respond, and that I was going to persevere through this and take that role to talk about this larger issue, right? So feminism to me is very liberating and absolutely crucial, even if it is difficult and challenging and complicated and messy. But I think that that's really important, and it's really important to own that. So we have had progress, obviously, like without a doubt, and just the makeup of the room and us being on this panel and having these conversations, and there's all kinds of things that we could list over the decades where progress has happened. My concern is that it's not enough, and that if we just think that progress is this magical thing that happens on its own, then people aren't going to actively do the work to make that progress happen. So I think that it's important that we're kind of cynical in some degree, like to